I came across this concept some time ago. It's a concept that comes out of education, and it's the idea of threshold concepts. Threshold concepts. The idea is that, and as I say, it's an educational concept primarily, is that there are certain ideas which, once you get them, they kind of open the door or open the floodgates to a whole set of further ideas that simply aren't available if you don't have this one threshold idea, threshold concept. So it's all the kind of visual image is that, you know, there's a whole set of ideas in some territory, some space beyond this little portal that this concept represents. And once you get that and step through the portal that this threshold, that this concept has been blocking, or your inability to understand this threshold has been blocking, then you cross the threshold and you enter the sunny uplands of higher knowledge kind of thing. And it's a disputed idea, I think, within the humanities and in education. But I think it has quite a bit of explanatory power, actually, and I can kind of feel it working with myself sometimes. I mean, I certainly think it has a correlate, not so much in individual experience, but in, or possibly in individual experience, but within something like, you know, the history of science. You know, until the idea of, for example, the theory of natural selection was arrived at, you know, through Darwin and the various people around Darwin who contributed to that idea. You know, without that idea in place, a lot of things are, I would say, quite literally unthinkable. But once you get the idea of natural selection, or once the scientific community embraced the idea and accepted the idea of natural selection, a whole series of other thoughts and ideas and concepts and theories and structures and experiments and hypotheses and that whole map of everything really from there on in, you know, everything leading up to the Human Genome Project really falls out of that, and that is all part of a territory which lay behind the threshold or beyond the threshold of this concept of natural selection. So I think there are some experiences like that. I have to say I can't think of an individual experience I've had like that. I mean, the nearest I've had is what I've been talking about in these videos quite a bit, which is to do with the significance and the role of metaphor. You know, once I kind of got that internalised into my head, a lot of things became much easier to think about. Difficult still, and I still haven't got a lot of it, but that was one of those ideas which for me was relatively simple. You know, you can kind of write it down in 3 lines of paper, but once you've got it, as I say, a whole series of other thoughts and ideas and readings and experiences flow out of it, or follow from that. How I kind of imagine it, and this seems nothing connected, how I kind of imagine it is one of those kind of cultural moments that I suppose we all go through, particularly when we're teenagers, in which the world changes remarkably. Not on the global scale, but on a kind of personal scale. Because that's, I think, where these things start to come alive and become experienceable, whatever. Which for me was experiences like seeing the Sex Pistols perform Pretty Vacant sometime in 1977. Which is a fuck of a long time ago, actually, thinking about it. But up until 1977, for me at least, you know, my kind of musical world and the kind of subcultural world which revolved around that was all about people like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Deep Purple. And if you were sophisticated, it was people like Yes or Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It was all this kind of prog rock stuff. That's what you had to like. And if I seem to remember, I certainly owned the album, so I guess I must have liked it. And if you didn't like that, the only other options was things like ABBA or the Rubettes or the Bay City Rollers. And those were absolutely things that only your little sister or your little brother or the people, you know, 5 or 6 years younger than you were allowed to like. So I remember it very clearly. So when Pretty Vacant came out in 1977 for me, and for a lot of people my age, I think, it was almost like a door being opened. Not to a great set of whole new philosophical ideas, nothing like that, and certainly not to a whole raft of new scientific theories and explanations of how the human race came to be where it is. But on a completely personal, experiential level, a door was thrown open at that point about what music could be like, about what fashion could be like, about what social organisation could look like. However naive that was, you know, I mean, it was about anarchy in the UK at the time, so it was terribly naive. But nevertheless, you know, those pastures were absolutely made available suddenly, relatively suddenly. You know, in the space of 3.5 minutes from that song's fantastic opening chord to the no future ending, really, just marvellous. I still get that occasionally, not with listening to the Sex Pistols. It's slightly creepy looking at that now, given what happened to the various members of the Sex Pistols, and particularly Johnny Rotten's appearance in reality TV shows and advertising margarine and that kind of thing. But I still get something like that occasionally with some good artworks, and good scientific theories as well, of course, but good artworks do it for me as well, particularly good conceptual artwork, where you get an idea, or you see an artwork and it's just so sophisticated, or you just get this kind of frisson of Jesus, this is a really simple piece of work, but a lot of stuff lies behind this. I could spend a lot of time in the kind of cognitive space that lies on the other side of this piece. I love that feeling, really. Threshold concepts.